Hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews unboxing. Today we're looking at one of the latest releases for the Horus Heresy, Horus Ascended. So first of all I want to say a massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us a free review copy to check out. Wasn't expecting this to turn up on the door because it's a big old Primarch model. I've built the standard Horus model, which was an absolute joy to put together and paint. And yeah, Horus Ascended, clocking in at 1,000 points, so he's only usable in 4,000 point games of Horus Heresy. Should be something very special. I've not had a proper dive into all the bits here, but having a quick look at the instructions, there's a lot of parts. So yeah, the plan is to get this built and hopefully painted by the time the video goes out. But obviously with it being a big intricate model, it might be part completed. Either way, it'll be at the very least built and some initial colours down. So at the end of the video, what we'll do is have a look at Horus Ascended, see how he stacks up size-wise against the standard Horus model, and yeah, have a look at the awesome detail on the kit. So this is a big chunky box. It's like, I think it's the same size as the Samus box. It's like a triple-decker box. If you take the lid off, inside we get little assembly instruction manual, quite a few pages on that, we'll come to that in a second. And then we've got 3 kind of trays of components. So there's an awful lot of parts here. What we'll do is we'll have a quick look at these, but there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to go zooming into each individual piece because you'll get the idea. What we're going to do then is have a look at the instruction manual, see how he goes all together, and then, yeah, like I say, at the end of the video we'll have him built up and do some size comparisons to the standard Horus. So first of all, what we'll do is have a look at some of the parts in here and just look at some of the detail on these. Like I say, there's an awful lot of parts on this kit. If you built a Horus, the kind of standard one, you should know what to expect. A lot of these parts are going to be similar, but he's got a bit more bulk to him. He's looking a bit more vicious and quote marks chaotic than the standard one. I don't think the model's going to be too much kind of like bigger than him, I don't think. But obviously you've not built this yet, so we'll see how he stacks up to him. He certainly looks more impressive on the cover art, and his kind of mountain of skulls that he's standing on. I mean, eyeballing it now, does look a similar size to the standard Horus, but that is a big chunky leg too. So we'll see, maybe he is a little bit bigger, kind of in proportions than the old one. The old one was kind of like standing on a kind of bit of fallen masonry with a bit of a staircase and stuff. So I assume this one's going to be bigger than the old one, even counting that in. Obviously don't quote me on that until it's built. But yeah, there's lots of detail in here. Lots of like ammo feeds and stuff. It's going to be a really kind of complex kit to build, I think. Let's crack open this one. What I will say is make sure you check out the assembly instructions if you've not built a Forge World mod before. If you this is a first one for you, Horus is jumping in at the deep end because he has got an awful lot of parts. But essentially what you want to make sure is take your time, clean them up with soapy water first. The way the kind of resin models work is that they're in like rubber moulds and they put a release agent on them to help the parts pop out. But obviously that release agent can cause the paint to not stick. So it's always best to give the models a good scrub in soapy water before you start working with them. And then take your time cleaning up all the pieces as well. You see, oh, this is a big chunk of resin. And you've got this kind of gate here. So you probably want to cut it like here and then go in and try and tidy it up. If you just try and cut it straight flush to it, what you'll find is sometimes the tension of it will cause it to like snap and break. And obviously with a big kind of expensive kit like this, you don't want to do that. Now, with this being kind of a new kit and straight out of the moulds, it looks like a pretty good cast to me, to be fair. But what you want to do is just make sure all the parts are okay. What you'll find sometimes is that some parts might warp as the cooling, as they're kind of coming out of the mould. So you just want to check over everything, make sure it all fits. What you find is a lot more prep than you'd have in a plastic kit, but it's kind of well worth your time to kind of make sure it's all okay. Like here we've got a little bit of flash here. So what we'll need to do is just carefully remove all that before we do it. When we go through the instructions as well, there might be some areas that you want to keep separate to make it a little bit easier to build this thing. And we'll see that as we go through the instructions. Again, at the end of the video, I'll have this built as well and hopefully painted, or at least started painting. So I should have some advice on how to put this together. But yeah, I mean, this is such a gorgeous kit. For the standard Horus, I left the head separate because it's easier to get to the head and try and paint that kind of decently. And the kind of cloak on his back separate, just because you're not be able to get your brush into the detail. So based on the original Horus model, there are two bits I'd probably leave separate, but obviously we'll have to look at the assembly instructions to see how kind of feasible that is. So speaking of the instructions, before we kind of jump ahead into the future and have a look at kind of the assembled and finished model, I want to go through the instructions because I had a quick glance at this when I opened it up. But yeah, it has got a lot of parts, so you don't want to rush yourself with this one because it's going to be a big showpiece model for your Sons of Horus army. You don't want to rush it and potentially damage parts or get them wrong, so just take your time. It's a little bit intimidating when you get the kind of exploded diagram of all the parts, but this is a lot better than previous Forge World instructions. If you built some a couple of years ago, you'd pretty much just have that exploded diagram and be left to kind of work it out yourself. Recent Forge World instructions have similar kind of assembly guides to the standard plastic Games Workshop kit, so it'll spell out all the parts that you need. What I would say, the kind of exploded diagram on the front is very handy. Once I've kind of finished this unboxing, I'm going to get all the parts out and just cross-reference to make sure I've got all the bits there before I clean it, because what you don't want to do is start building it and then realise you've got a piece missing. So it's always worth kind of checking that you've got all the bits here, otherwise that might be a bit of a nightmare later on. But yeah, even the Talon of Horus is, what's that, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parts? When his weapon's 9 parts, you know it's going to be a big build, so just take your time with it. Obviously it's quite intricate with all the kind of claws and the ammo feeds and stuff, so yeah, just take your time with it. So you build up his body and his mace. It looks like you might be able to leave the cloak separate and put it in at the end of the model, but obviously this kind of wolf bit goes kind of over the top carapace, so I'm thinking, depends how these bits fit in. If they don't join to the cloak directly, you might be able to build like his body, build the wolf kind of cloak on the back, keep that bit separate on the back too, and that'll just make it easier to paint those parts. If you stick it all together, the problem you're going to have is getting to the back of him, it's going to be all obscured by this cloak, and for a big kind of centerpiece model like this, you probably are going to be wanting to paint in those areas. I mean, there's an argument to say if it's obscured by a cloak, you're not going to be able to see it. The problem is where it makes it difficult to paint it. So again, once I've had to play with the actual model, I can kind of feedback on how it's best to do that. What I will say with the original Horus model, it was a lot easier to paint without that cloak in place, so probably going to look to keep that separate. Probably going to look to keep the head separate as well. The head's got a tiny little piece of detail on it. If you've seen the Horus Heresy trailer that Games Workshop put out when the new edition of the game came out, he's got like tubes going into his nose, and that's a separate piece too. So I'd probably build up the head and that the kind of like the tubing, stick that to a painting stand or something, and then you can paint the head a lot easier rather than worrying about getting kind of like flesh colours onto the black of his armour. And it also means that you can paint kind of the detail of his armour as well. With this being Horus Ascended, I'm probably going to try and do kind of echoes of that classic Horus artwork with the red glow up on his face. So obviously maybe a bit of airbrush work to try and get that red glow on him. Trial and error. It might go disastrously wrong, but that's the kind of vibe I want to try and go for. So that's going to be easier leaving those parts separate too, so you can get to them. Once you've built the bulk of the body, you've then got the main sub-assemblies that kind of slot together, and it's going to be a bit easier to work on. And then you've also got that big scenic base too. So yeah, a lot of detail on there. Go to town painting that too, make it look awesome. What I would say is don't glue together all these bits, because it means that you can remove Horus from his display stand and then use him in games. Because really in games he should be on like this base size. With the current Horus, I tend to use him on the big base anyway. You're at a disadvantage to yourself, but he looks cool, doesn't he? So yeah, it looks a really, really fun kit to put together. It's going to take a little bit of time to do, and obviously I want to try and get a decent paint job on this. So what we're going to do is cut to the future. We'll have this built and I'll have started painting it. I may not have it fully painted, but if I don't, what we'll be doing is have a painting stream, and every week we'll be kind of working on Horus during that. So let's jump to the future and see what this guy looks like assembled. And here's a look at the finished Primarch, and I've got to say this was a really, really fun model to paint up. It's definitely worth building in sub-assemblies, because as you can see there's quite a few details that are a little tricky to get to if you try and build him all in one go. So the kind of cape behind him, the wolf on top, his body, his head, his two arms, and the various pieces that make up the base I left as sub-assemblies, just to make it a little bit easier to get to all that detail. And obviously this is kind of knocked together in just over a week for the video, but really happy with how it turned out. It's such a fun model to build. He's quite a bit bigger than the current Horus model as well, so I'll do a little bit of a size comparison in a second just to show kind of how he stacks up to the current one. But this guy's definitely kind of more imposing. There's a bit more bulk to his build. He looks a lot more intimidating. You'll notice little things like the kind of the wolf on his back is a bit more rotten and kind of decrepit looking. He's got some more spikes on his armour where he never used to before. He's looking a bit more where the face of the original one looked quite kind of serene and regal. He looks a bit more vicious and yeah, unimpressed on this one, not to mention his kind of feeding tubes and stuff that he's got built into him too. So yeah, really, really fun model to put together, and yeah, kind of want to expand my Sons of Horus out now to support him, because at 1,000 points he is a big chunk of this army now. So I think I'll need to pick up a few more squads just to make a legal 4,000 point force to be able to use this guy. But yeah, what we'll do next is have a quick look at him compared to the previous Horus model and see just how big he is compared to him. And here's a look at what the two Horuses look like together. So complete size of the model, they're both about a similar height. Horus Ascended has obviously got a much bigger base than the old Horus, and he's got a lot more bulk to him too. Obviously the classic Horus is kind of climbing up those stairs, which gives him a bit more height, but kind of like if you measured them both next to each other, as you can see there now, the new Horus is definitely a lot bigger, kind of his dimensions, though not necessarily the model, which also means that if you've got a case that can hold the old Horus, you should be able to squeeze in the new Horus too. They're both excellent models. I really enjoyed painting both of them too. Yeah, you're probably not going to see him in any kind of smaller games of Horus Heresy, but as a centerpiece for the Sons of Horus, it's definitely got to be done. I'm really excited to see if Games Workshop bring out some other alternate sculpts of the other Primarchs. You know, the Khan maybe on his jet bike, maybe alternate sculpts of the Demon Primarchs. And obviously I've got the plastic models for Warhammer 40,000 for them, but you know, there's quite a few Primarchs that could maybe have different armaments or different poses to represent them at different stages of the Horus Heresy. So that is something that I'd like to see. But yeah, it's been really fun painting them up. So Horus Ascended is available to buy today. If you've enjoyed this, why not give us a follow? We do a lot of videos, painting videos, unboxings, battle reports, all that kind of stuff. So they're all here on YouTube. We do a weekly painting stream on a Sunday too, so if you want to see us kind of paint some stuff, you can tune into that. I've also got a companion article over on spruesandbrews.com too. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, want to see a full write-up and some more pictures of the models, then head on over there. But until next time, we hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.